Hello, we're back. It's the Hot Action Podcast, and I'm your host, Matt Kerr. And I'm not feeling super great today. I'm a bit under the weather. It's week 2, and week 3, and I'm already banged up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna review what happened last week, and then we're gonna go and make my bets for the week. Give you my every game against the spread, 5 best bets, and because I am out of Survivor, we are doing a lock of the week instead of a survivor pick because that's done for me. It's week 3 and I am out. Took multiple swings at the ball and I'm done. So, without further ado, let's get things started here. We started last week with Buffalo and Miami. That's a game I don't want to talk about much. I'm a big fan of Mr. Tua Tagovailoa. We bet on Miami minus 1.5, and that was covering for about 7 seconds. Buffalo kind of ran the game, bullied Miami wire to wire, and a bad injury happened. We're not talking about it. That's over. Kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. We start Sunday morning with New Orleans at Dallas. We take New Orleans plus 6.5, and New Orleans beats the brakes off Dallas. Just takes them behind the woodshed, smacks them around a bunch. 44-19, easy cover with extra points to spare. And here's one that really hurt me. We had Las Vegas at Baltimore. Las Vegas was getting 9.5 points, but I took the other side of that. I was sure Baltimore would win and cover. I was fairly sure they would cover. Certain they would win. And Las Vegas won outright. Baltimore was covering with, midway through the fourth quarter, and they managed to give up the whole game. And I had 3 survivor picks all on Baltimore last week. It was called the high confidence play, the ultimate conviction play, and we were wrong. So don't listen to me necessarily. Gonna have to move on from that one. Gonna have to take our lumps and move on. So then we got New York Giants at Washington. We took Washington minus 2.5. The Giants managed to, I think they said they scored 3 touchdowns and allowed none, yet somehow lost this game 18-21. Impressive stuff. Washington covers by a half point. You love to see it. And we had the Chargers at Carolina. Chargers minus 6.5. I slammed that one. Yeah, unfortunate stuff. You see Bryce Young get benched. They only score 3 points. What more can I say? This is an absolute ass kicking. Chargers play pretty mean football in the trenches, and they didn't look back. They just smoked Carolina. Then we got Indianapolis at Green Bay. We were hoping that Malik Willis would be bad enough that Indy could cover, but turns out Matt LaFleur is a good enough coach, and Indy's defense was bad enough that they managed to get the job done. They did not need the extra points. They won outright. And then we have San Francisco at Minnesota. I was unaware that San Francisco has lost this matchup for every time since the mid-90s, I believe. San Francisco at Minnesota. Minnesota was getting points. Should have taken the home dog. Minnesota wins 23-17. Then we had Cleveland at Jacksonville. We took the home favorite, and Cleveland won outright. Bad day for your boy. This one I feel less bad about. Seattle. I took Seattle minus 3.5 on the road against New England. Seattle wins by 3. We missed by the hook. England covers by the half point, and sometimes you're wrong, but feels like you're right when you pick the winning team and get most of the cover. It's tough. This is why gambling isn't easy. Then we took the Jets over Tennessee. Jets win by 7. 4.5 point favorites. That's a cover by 2.5 points. We'll take it. Moving on. Tampa Bay getting points. They win outright. Detroit loses at home to Tampa. Tampa's looking pretty strong. The NFC South is actually looking pretty defiant. A lot of people did not have the NFC South to win a lot of games this year, but New Orleans and Tampa both are undefeated. and the Falcons win their first game against Philadelphia later in this slate. So, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but yeah, that all is happening. Pretty impressive. So the Rams start 0-2. They were getting 1.5 on the road at Arizona. I thought the Rams, were an infrastructure team. I thought they had, a good coach and a good quarterback, and they would scheme themselves up and figure out a way to win against the historically quite bad Arizona Cardinals. Didn't go that way. Arizona hung 41 points on the Rams. They lose horrifically. What is that? Like a 29.5 point cover? Yeah, it's tough. That's a pretty big loss for the Rams. The Ramily is in shambles right now. I think I was a little bit overzealous thinking they could overcome these horrific O-line issues they have. Puka Nakua's out. And during the game, Cooper Kupp would sustain an ankle injury, so I think they're even worse going forward. So, something to monitor. Then, later in the afternoon, we had Pittsburgh at Denver. We took Pittsburgh because we do not trust Denver's offense, and correctly, Denver only scored 6 points in this game. And Pittsburgh would win outright, win easily, cover easily. This Denver team looks pretty bad, and I will be gladly betting against them more going forward. And here's another one we lost. We took Kansas City minus 5.5 at home against Cincinnati. That game would end 25-26. Kansas City win by 1 point. They do not cover, but they do win. They cover based on the final drive, if I remember correctly. And it's tough. I was very confident Kansas City would cover on this one, but I also said, I'd be happy to be wrong. Cincinnati could win, whatever. They have the capacity to be better than this. Cincinnati's 0-2. Kansas is 2-0. What more can be said? Lose by the line. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, we took Houston minus 6.5 at home against Chicago, and of course they win by 6, which is another half-point miss for your boy. We would make up for all of this on Sunday night by taking Atlanta plus 6.5. Atlanta would beat Philadelphia 22-21. The spread wasn't necessary. This being said, this was not a very good week for me. Ultimately, we would go 7-9. Best bets would go 2 out of 5 hit, which puts my best bets on the year to 6 out of 10. So not terrible. I believe we got 17 wins up on the board for Pick'em so far. 17 out of 32. Not terrible. We are going to try to put some more points on the board this week. All right, and we are going to begin previewing this week now. We are beginning Thursday Night Football on Amazon. We got New England at the Jets. New England's getting 6.5 points. I think they're just going to win this game. Boom. New England plus 6.5. Also, a rule I try to live by as long as I can usually do. Like sometimes I can't make it happen in my brain, but we try to take underdogs during the divisional primetime games. They do extremely well historically. Every time I don't pick one, they win. We're just taking these games tend to be tight, and sometimes the lines get a little extra big in these divisional games, despite them usually being very tight. So, moving forward, we got Sunday morning. We got Chicago getting 1.5 at Indy. I think this is a good line. We are going to be taking Indy because they are at home. I don't think that they're going to go 0-3, and I don't think they're going to go 0-3 against the Chicago team. That being said, we might have to get some luck from Anthony Richardson. He's going to air it out, and if he hits his receivers, he's going to win the game. I I think Indianapolis' defense is suspect, but Chicago has been pretty bad on offense so far. If you can just confuse Caleb Williams a bit, I think this game is yours to win. Hopefully they can get loud in, I believe it's Lucas Oil Stadium. So let's go Indy. I don't feel great about this, but I'm taking the home team. Then we've got the Giants at Cleveland. I underestimated Cleveland last week. But something about 6.5 points makes me feel like I should take the Giants, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the Giants. I don't feel great about it again. Cleveland looked better last week than they did in week 1. They couldn't have looked much worse than they looked in week 1, but we're going to see if this is a trend or not. I don't know if the Giants are going to win, but I think they might hang around. 6.5 points is a lot. Cleveland doesn't tend to run the score up too big. We're going to take the points. And then we have Green Bay at Tennessee. So last week I bet against Malik Willis. And I'm going to do it again this week. This time they're on the road. This stuff is harder to do on the road. Malik Willis, now they got some tape on the guy. Hopefully they can figure it out. Tennessee's defensive front is pretty scary. And as long as Will the Thrill Levis doesn't, throw a pick six like he has in the first 2 games, I think Tennessee can move to 1-2. And if he doesn't, I think he's benched. So we'll see how that goes. Something to monitor going forward. And now we've got Philadelphia at New Orleans. And I think this might seem a little strange, because last week I said Philadelphia's defense is allowing a lot of explosive plays. New Orleans is producing a lot of explosive plays. They are at home. So many things tell me I should hit the New Orleans button, but for whatever reason, I feel that Philadelphia is the right way to go. I feel like this is a trap. I feel like, having watched New Orleans for 2 weeks, I don't think I've seen them trail much. I don't think I've seen them be challenged by the opposing team's offense. I think Philadelphia will give them a challenge. I think that Philadelphia is going to put up some points, and they're going to pressure Derek Carr to make some decisions that make him uncomfortable for the first time this year. So we're taking Philly. We're taking the points. I don't think Philadelphia is going to make kind of the same mistakes they did last week. Yep, we are taking Philly plus 2.5 over New Orleans. It feels very strange. I might regret this, but, that's what we're going to do. Now we've got the 2 teams that I've been correct about on both weeks. I've taken the Chargers. I've taken Pittsburgh both weeks. Both have covered. But it's the Who Have You Beat Bowl. Neither one of these teams has beat an impressive team as of yet. That being said, I tend to think that neither one of these teams likes to run the score up. I'm just going to be taking the points. We're taking the Chargers. I don't feel great about it either way. Both these teams, I think, are going to, be defensively fairly stifling. Both these teams are well coached. I guess when it comes to which coach and which quarterback, I'm taking Herbert and Harbaugh over Fields. And, oh my God, my brain isn't working very well. I'm very sick. Fields and the coach of Pittsburgh. I'm sorry. I need to respect you more than that, but that's as good as I'm doing right now. All right, we are moving on. Houston and Minnesota. Minnesota's getting 2.5 at home. I'm taking Houston. I feel like Minnesota's receiving corps is too banged up. Can't trust them. That's kind of their where they get the value in their squad. But if Justin Jefferson is banged up, you don't have Addison. Hawkinson's sidelined. I just don't know where the points are coming from. And Houston's been performing. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Minnesota's sneaky good, but I don't know. Moving on. Last game of the morning slate, we got Denver visiting Tampa Bay. Easy clap. We are taking Tampa Bay minus 6.5. This Denver team is atrocious. I think they're going to put Bo Nix in the blender. Tampa's defense is well coached. Baker Mayfield is spinning it. Maybe Denver can hang around, keep it within 6.5. I can't imagine them winning this game. Yeah, that's it for me. That's all I'm saying. Now, here's a game that I find very intriguing. First game of the afternoon, we got Carolina at Las Vegas. Carolina is getting 5.5 on the road. Vegas, I mean, they beat Baltimore last week. Very impressive. But I just still don't believe that they're a truly great team. That being said, Carolina has been god-awful, but they have benched Bryce Young. They are bringing in the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton. The question is, how much does that fix going forward? Is it enough to incentivize me to click plus 5.5 on Carolina? I don't think so. We're going to take Vegas minus 5.5 at home. This is one of those ones where if Carolina looks that much better with Dalton, it's going to be really bad for Mr. Bryce Young. They might, though. Dalton did come in last year and play pretty well for 2 games for Carolina, if I remember correctly. I remember one really well because it was against the Seahawks, and I watched the whole thing, and I was losing my mind because, we were battling it out with the Carolina team that everyone had been smoking. But, classic Seahawks football. Which is a great preview for the next game. Also, afternoon game, we got Miami at Seattle. Miami's getting 5.5 points. Of course, Tua is out with concussion symptoms. So Seattle's at home. It can be a tough place to play. But for whatever reason, whenever Seattle is playing a backup quarterback, they tend to play down to them. That might be a relic of the Pete Carroll era. But that being said, Miami's offense, I think, still looks like it has potent weapons. And Skylar Thompson will not look as bad as he did at the end of the blowout where they weren't playing any of their offensive players. I'm taking Miami plus 5.5. I think Seattle probably wins the game, but Miami keeps it close. Yeah. And that's the thing. If Seattle does manage to cover it, I'll feel great. So we are taking Miami plus 5.5. Maybe it's an emotional hedge. Maybe it's real. Maybe Seattle does have trouble with backup quarterbacks. It's tough to say. Like I said, that might just be a Pete Carroll era thing. Maybe Mike McDonald has everything figured out. I also don't think really Seattle's beaten anyone impressive yet. And I think that Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, or Devon Achane, any one of them would be the best offensive player we've played so far. And they are all playing on Sunday as far as I know. Lucky for Seattle that Tua is not playing. Or, that we don't have to play Tua. Tua should not be playing on Sunday. That's for sure. Okay, moving on. We got Detroit at Arizona. Arizona's getting 2.5 points. I'm taking Detroit. I think they had a bad week last week. I think that Detroit will be able to move the ball on Arizona's defense. And I think Aiden Hutchinson's going to give little Kyler Murray more trouble than he got last week against apparently no friction from the LA Rams. But that being said, Kyler Murray is a scary player to have to play. He's so elusive, and his arm is like, a cannon. I wouldn't be surprised if Arizona did win this, but I'm taking Detroit. I said before the season that this Detroit team might lead the NFC. I don't know if that's still going to be the case. I don't know if they come out looking as dominant as I hoped, but I still do believe that they are a sneaky good team, or a good team, and they should be able to beat Arizona. Moving on. San Francisco 49ers at the Rams. The Rams are getting 7.5 points at home. Usually if you saw LA Rams getting 7.5 points at home, that's just an easy click. You love Sean McVay at home. That being said, the Rams are just in trouble. And the San Francisco crowd, the 49ers fans that are willing to go to SoFi Stadium, there are many. So I don't think that the home field advantage is going to be huge in SoFi. Oftentimes, it is not for the two home teams there. Let's say it's Rams Raiders. That can be a tough game. Rams San Francisco, Chargers versus just about anybody who has a fan base. Those can be tough matchups. We're going to be taking San Francisco minus 7.5, and we're just kind of betting on the Rams having fallen apart. I feel like San Francisco's front seven is going to be all up in the Rams' backfield. And I know San Francisco's a bit banged up on offense as well, but I just think that the Rams are not going to be able to figure out what to do in terms of making their offense go. They might be able to keep it within 7.5, but I tend to think San Francisco is going to win, and they're going to slowly break this game apart. I think that the Niners are the better team than Arizona, and Arizona beat them by almost 30. So that's what we're going to bet on. We'll see what happens. Now we've got a funny matchup here for the last game of the afternoon. We got Baltimore at Dallas. Baltimore is laying a half point. Now, Dallas is the only team here with one win. I think both these teams have the playoffs as the goal. I feel like whoever loses this game will be very embarrassed. It's going to be tough for whoever loses this game. Either Baltimore's 0-3 or Dallas is 1-2. If Baltimore's 0-3, you might be able to kiss the playoffs goodbye, which is why I'm taking them. I don't feel great about it. I think Dallas at home is going to be a tough out. That being said, Dallas is probably the most all over the place team in the league. Like, they beat bad teams so badly. They lose to good teams. They're a real coin flip. Baltimore is kind of the same. I don't know. I just believe in the Baltimore coaching staff a bit more. And I just don't think that Baltimore deserves to be, or they deserve to be 0-2 certainly, but they've looked pretty good. They've looked better than an 0-2 record tends to look. All right, moving on. We got the Sunday night game. We got Kansas City at Atlanta. Atlanta's getting 3.5 points at home. I don't really understand this line. I'm taking Kansas City. Let me think for a moment. Kansas City defeated Baltimore in their first game and the Bengals in their second game. I feel like both those teams have playoff aspirations. I think Atlanta should be trying to win their division. But yeah, I tend to think that Kansas City should win this game. I tend to think that Atlanta's been struggling for almost, let's say, 7 quarters of an 8-quarter season so far. Like I said, hard to understand this line. If it was a couple points more, I would be taking Atlanta. But we'll be taking Kansas City. We'll see how it goes. And then we got 2 games on Monday for some reason. I have no idea why, but we do. We got Jacksonville at Buffalo. Buffalo's laying 5.5 points. We're taking Jacksonville. We're taking the points. And then we've got Washington getting 7.5 points at Cincinnati. Again, we're taking the points. I like in the primetime games, if there's a big spread, I tend to think that the referees like to keep the primetime games closer. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think the NFL doesn't like people changing the channel. And when it's, when the point spread, when the difference in scores gets like 15, people tend to think the game's over. They change the channel. And yeah, we are going to be taking Jacksonville plus 5.5. I think Jacksonville, again, they're for a 0-2 team, they're looking okay. Bills have looked pretty dominant, but I think they've played 2 teams that absolutely fell apart against them. Like, it took them a while to get started against the Cardinals, and then Miami just totally imploded. So the Bills couldn't help but win that second game. we will see what happens here with Jacksonville. I tend to think that that's a big line, and I think Jacksonville will be able to keep it within 5.5. And regarding Washington's been pretty bad, but they at least have a win. Cincinnati, kind of all over the place. I think they might be able to win this game, but I don't think that they're pulling away by 8 points. Like that's a lot. They've had trouble. They've had trouble this season. I don't see why this line should be so big. We are taking Washington. All right, we are going to put in the number 47 here to submit these to my contest. And now we are going to pick our favorite 5, our best 5 bets. And we're going to start with Houston, -2.5 at Minnesota. Then we are taking Tampa, -6.5 over Denver. Sadly, we are taking Miami +5.5 over Seattle. Then we're taking San Francisco -7.5 over the Rams. And lastly, Philly fam, if you are watching this, we are taking Philadelphia +2.5 over New Orleans. Hard to believe. This New Orleans team has been kicking everyone's ass, but I feel this line is a trap. We're taking Philly. Philly's going to figure their stuff out. I'm putting New Orleans on fraud watch. That's right. New Orleans is on fraud watch. Putting up 91 points or however many in the first 2 weeks. That was fake. They did it against bums. So that's my favorite 5. And do I have a lock of the week? My lock of the week is that Tampa Bay beats Denver. Lock of the week is Tampa over Denver. And that's me, baby. That's me for the week. This has been the Hot Action Podcast. I have been not feeling so well. The coach of the Steelers is Mike Tomlin. I remembered. All right. That's everything from me. See you next week. Peace.